Here we go, continuing. Alba tunc erat caput Latio. So Alba was then the capital, or the head, to Latium, the work of Julius. For he had contempserated, and that means he spurned or looked down upon, Lavinium of his father Aeneas. Okay. Abheres from these somethings, Amulius, Yam already, was ruling the seventh subole. So he was the seventh offspring from Aeneas' time. Having fratre pulso numitor, having repulsed, driven out his brother Numitor, of whom Romulus had come from his daughter. Okay, so that's just a little bit of information there. So Numitor had been driven out, and Romulus was the daughter of Numitor. So therefore, start him immediately in the prima facie, the first torch of his youth. He deturbed, he swept out from the citadel his patrum, his uncle, and he reponented in charge his avum, his grandfather. Ipsi himself, now Romulus, the guy who's put his uncle back on the throne, he's an armator, there's an apposition and nominative. He's a lover. I'm guessing this should be a flumen, which is a river. Lover of fluminous and mountains, lover of rivers and mountains, apud quad, so flumen is a neuter. Amongst once he was educatus, so he was reared up amongst rivers and mountains, and so he loved them. He was agitabating, he was doing it, or making some action, so that there'd be a wall of a new city. So by building the wall, he was building a new city. Geminis they were, so they were born and with a horoscope of Gemini. No, Romulus and Remus were twins. And Uta means which of the two should rule, and it should be auspicious, and so they could rule. It was decided to adhibere the gods. Adhibere is usually like when you invite someone to a table or whatever. So they decided to leave it up to the gods for their auspices of who would rule. Remus, he's the twin of Romulus. In the mountain Aventinium, he occupied here on the Palladium as well, the Palatine on the Aventine mountain. Prior, so he was the first, Ili, that was him. He saw six vultures. So that was him. And to this other guy afterwards, he visited. He saw them afterwards, but there were 12 of them. So the first guy saw 6, the second guy saw 12. Sic victor. Thus the victor, in the auguries, of looking for signs from the god, he excited an urbum. So excite can mean to wake up, or to rouse, or to be excited. Also means to raise up or build. So he was going to build a city, and he was plenus of spe, he was full of hope for the future. It would be a bellatricem urbem. It'd be a warlike city. This looks like the birds promising this ad sueta, so the birds are accustomed to blood and preda, in, you might want to say booty or stealing or whatever you want to call it. So that's why he thought the city would be warlike, because vultures are accustomed to blood, etc. Ad tutelam. Okay, so it seemed that a rampart was suffice to the tutelage, or to the safeguarding of the new city, of which, while it was angustious, while it was narrow, Remus increpated, usually it means to insult or something, or make a noise, so in a salto, in a leap. It looks like, as we know from history, he leaped over it, and he was complaining about it, saying it was too narrow. Dubium, there's some doubt, and means whether, or if, it was by order of his brother. He was a Kieselcest. So Remus jumped over the narrow vallum, and he was put to death. Sometimes they think it could have been by order of his brother, but he was killed anyway. Prima victima. So the first victim, certainly Fuad, he was. And the munition, this is all the fortifications of the city, with his sanguine, with his blood, suo sanguine, he consecrated the new city. What have we got here? the image of a city, it was Magus Quam, more than a city. So, he'd had the idea of a city more than actually there was a city. For Dirent, it was lacking inhabitants in Colas, basically. It was lacking people to live there. Erat in Proximo, there was in the nearby area a Lucas, a grove, I'm guessing that is there. This he facketed an asylum. He made this an asylum. This is all in Livy Book 1, which I've read elsewhere as well. And immediately, Statum, miraculously or marvellously, there was a vis hominum. There was a force of man, or there was a quantity of men. Latin and Tuscan pastors, shepherds. Quidam, certain even transmariners, people from across the Mare, across the sea. Phrygians who had come under Aeneas, and Arcades who, with Evandrus as their leader, they'd influx surrendered into the asylum. Ita, and so from various elements, as if from one body, a corpus is neuter, he congregated, as you know the Gregs are flocks, so congregate just means they all come together. So from various elements they congregated into one corpus, and he made himself the populum Romanum, the Roman people. But the res, probably means the republic, or a country, would be of one age. There's that predominative, so you have the I and the genitive and dative. There would only be a people of men would only last for one age, and so accordingly, itaque petita matrimony. Matrimony was sought from the Phoenician people, the neighbouring people, and queer because this was not, they didn't get what they asked for. In Petrobantor means they would mean you had received it, and so non means they did not receive this. They were capta sunt. Matrimonies were taken by manu, by hand or by force. Quippy, this would be the a quippy in the sense of sense, and not the quippy of nempi, which means surely, which would be an adverb. So this is like a conjunction or something. So with simulatus ludus equestrium, so they simulated equestrian games and virgins, who had come to the spectacle to see it, fuerant, they were made preda, they were captured, they were become the booty, captured at this simulated games. Et haec statim causa bellorum. And these actions, since haec would be neuter plural, immediately was a cause of war. The Vientes were polside, were repulsed, and fugiti, and fled. Caenicium was captured, and this opidum, this town was dirutum, overturned, pillaged. And in super, above all this, opima spoils, like the best spoils from King Acrone. Looks like he carried them away. The king carried these away with his own manabuses, with his own hands, to Feritrio Jove. This is a form of Jupiter. What do we got? Jupiter as the striker of his enemies, something like that. We'll scroll a bit. Sabinus, with the Sabines, or to the Sabines. Protoporte, so looks like the gates were betrayed to the Sabines. Their gates were betrayed through the Virgin Tapia. Another famous story. I don't know if this is a typo or an alternate spelling. Yes, so there's different versions of it. We have haec dolos, and we have Eli, which means that's that bit there. Anyway, we'll just go with the common bit, which is from here on. So the price was the things which they were carrying on their left hands, in their cinstrus she sought them. So if we're taking this reading, it would be the girl did this. A neck dolo, which means not with a trick or something, but in the other versions it says dolose, so make what you want out of it anyway. it was doubtful whether this was the shields or the arm millers. So she would have been wanting the arm millers, which are the expensive armbands and jewels, but it was actually the clippiest they got. For they, so that they could solve rent what they'd promised, so they could pay out what they'd promised, and Orcus Scarentor and get some revenge, they obrorated her. They overwhelmed her with their clippius, with the shield. So she didn't get the riches, as usually happens with people who betray. They end up in a ditch. Okay, so thus admissus hostibus, the enemies had been admitted or came inside into the monies inside the walls. Atrox was the pugner. The fight was very fierce in the forum itself, in foro ipso, to such an extent, correlatives, that Romulus was begging Jovem, Jupiter, that he should subsisterent, he should halt the foul flight suorum of his men. And henceforth from that, he built a temple, and Jupiter was called Stator. Stator means someone who, sisterats, who stops. So that's one of the names of Jupiter. Tarman. Take it as nevertheless, the raptor, the females who had been seized with lacerous combs with torn hair, they intervened in the fury antibus men, to the furiously fighting men or something, and thus pax facta, thus peace happened. With Tardius, a fetus, a treaty was percussum struck. And Secuta, there followed a res, matters, miradictu, wonderful to say in the saying, that having relictus sedibus, having left their houses, the former enemy migrated into the novem urbem, into the new city. And with their generouses, their sons-in-laws, they sociated their ancestral wealth in the way of dowry, pro dote. Dote is dowry. Brevi, in a brief bit of time, with the Orctus Viribus, with their strength increased, this king imposed sapientimus statum. Okay, we'll just take the king was very wise. He imposed this statum, this status or conditions, on to the republic, that the Juventus, I think it should be divisor. Juventus is a female now. The young men were, should be divided anyway, pretty sure, into tribes, and in horses and arms they would excuberate, meaning being vigilant. Cubo is to lie down, so excubo means to be on your feet. For any sudden belli, for any certain war. What have we got? And this concilium, with this conditions or planning for the republic, that the pens senes est. Pens means belonging to, so looks like the council for the republic would belong to the old men, the sens, who from their authority of vocabatur were called fathers because of their age, and they called the senate. So the sens, the old men, formed the senatus because of their old age. Okay, at the end of the day, so status, condition, position, situations, conditions, rank, standing, status. So would be conditions in this case, and accusative singular. So ita, again, thus, with these things in order, or they were all carried out this way, repente suddenly, when he was having a contium, when he was having an assembly before the city, at the paludum of Capre, at the marshes of Capre, of a goat, that's a capital letter, so that's the name, something like that would be called the lake. From conspectu, from sight, he was a bladus there, so Romulus was holding an assembly and he vanished from sight, and that's it for the day.